Welcome to the OK Let's Learn podcast. This is two podcasts in one. One where we dive into tons of different topics. And yes, one where we dive into great books and stories. My name is Kevin O'Keefe. So today, let's learn about the buffalo, the North American bison specifically. Yes, as we keep going west, one of the fascinating parts of learning about the Wild West is that we came across this iconic beast of a mammal, United States official mammal, as of about 10, 15 years ago. So we will dive into everything, the history of the buffalo, and yes, we will interchangeably call it the buffalo and the bison, which we will get into as to why it's so confusing for a lot of people. But we'll talk about its history, everything about the animal, why it became so iconic to what we think about in the Great Plains, and the tragedy that happened through the 1800s when this beautiful creature almost went extinct. So, to start off, if you really want to mess with people, you like being that person at a party that can impress people, you like playing Jeopardy, what is the official name of the buffalo in North America, specifically the one in the Great Plains? Yeah, you got to ask, you got to say all this. The buffalo is the bison. What? Yes, the scientific name is bison. Why? Because this animal is the classic defining member of the bison group. The scientific names of animals start with the name of the group. And then you have the specific species of the group. And then you have the subspecies of the species. Meaning, and this is the only thing you need to know, it's the name bison corresponds to the overall group and the species. And yeah, the specific one that we think of that's grazing out there on the Great Plains. And you really want to mess with people? No, a buffalo is not the same. Buffalo is a completely different species. The buffalo is just the name that the French gave to this animal. You see, the 1600s, the French fur trappers, when they first came to North America, they saw this massive, shaggy, horned animal, and sure enough, it looked like the buffalo that they knew from Africa and Asia. So they called it buff. In French, you spell that B-O-E-U-F, which basically means ox or any kind of beef animal. So that eventually evolved into buffalo. So here's where we have to stop right now, because again, a lot of people are confused. Is a buffalo a bison? Is a bison a buffalo? Here's the answer. Like I said to start off with, we're talking about the North American bison in this episode, but everyone refers to the North American bison as a buffalo. It just stuck with the confusion with the original French fur traders, and that word that they gave the North American bison, buffalo, just stuck, and it's never been unstuck. So everyone today, the average American, I sincerely believe, you think of this animal, you look at it at a picture and you say, yeah, that's a buffalo. But technically, the buffalo is out in Asia and Africa, the African Cape buffalo and the Asian water buffalo. And yes, what are the differences between our North American bison and the buffalo that's out in Africa and Asia? Number one is its behavior. The bison is not aggressive at all, especially the one in Africa. The buffalo, very dangerous, one of the most dangerous animals, very aggressive, out in Africa. In terms of what it looks like, let's start with the bison. A shoulder hump. Buffalo, no hump. The bison, thick, shaggy fur, and yes, it has a beard. The buffalo, shorter hair, no beard. and the horns. The horns in the bison, shorter, sharper black horns. The buffalo, large, curved horns. Those are the big differences. And in terms of ultimately what first stands out, if you're trying to say, well, I'm not going to remember all this, obviously look at pictures. Podcast doesn't do justice to showing you pictures, but the big thing you want to take away from this, the bison's head is bigger. Now, buffalo itself, where it is in the culture, other than the animal, you got Buffalo, New York. And you're thinking, well, where did that name come from? Well, there's two theories based on the Native American name for a creek nearby, Buffalo Creek. And the French, again, the French, when they came upon Niagara Falls, right there near the falls, they called it the beautiful river. In French, that was Beau Vlouve. Yes, Beaufleuve. Beau Vlouve, which ultimately anglicized over time became Buffalo. The Buffalo Bills, the NFL football team, yes, because they were located there at the city in Buffalo. Well, why are they the Bills? Well, it's named after Buffalo Bill Cody, that famous showman that I've referenced in previous episodes. The buffalo is a mascot for so many colleges out there, specifically the University of Colorado. I mean, when you Google buffaloes, and I'm doing research on this podcast, everything came up NFL. Everything came up the University of Colorado. Their football team has been very popular in the last few years. And, of course, you have Buffalo Wild Wings. What? Chicken called Buffalo Wild Wings? No. Their name, Buffalo, refers to the Buffalo-style chicken wings from Buffalo, New York, not the animal. And, of course, you've got buffalo that appears on state seals, company logos, and that famous nickel, that buffalo nickel way back when that was minted from 1913 to 1938. So now back to the animal itself. An adult buffalo can weigh up to 2,000 pounds. They stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder. And yes, the hump is key. That muscular hump helps power its massive head like a snowplow, allowing them to sweep snow aside in the winter to find grass underneath. Through the years, this is how the buffalo evolved. And yeah, that buffalo over in Africa doesn't have that. And we will get back to this later, but in the early 1800s, there were estimates that there were up to 50 million bison across North America. What does a bison do all day? Almost 90% of the time, it's just grazing, which means it's just eating. They eat the tall grasses in the Great Plains, and yes, they migrate and move to find fresh grass, sometimes traveling miles every single day. They're fast. They can run up to 35 miles an hour. And yes, they wallow. How about this? Wallow. What's that? Well, it's when a bison rolls in dirt, creating these like little depressions in the soil. Why do they do that? To shed their fur, to make sure that they don't end up getting sick from all these ticks and all these insects that are constantly bothering them. That's why that tail's always moving. It regulates their body temperature, believe it or not. And sometimes it's just kind of like their way of, hey, let's just hang out, let's have fun. These wallows actually help the ecosystem. The rain collects in them, the seeds settle, and yeah, different habitats form. There's an entire huge understanding that we've come to know about literally simply these animals, these beasts just rolling in the grass and rolling in the dirt. It serves more than just them doing it for its own sake. They're actually like animals that are able to produce new animals, new plants. It's so fascinating what scientists have discovered in a simple little behavior. Now, the Native Americans, the bison, the buffalo, was part of their life. Without them, they wouldn't be. And that's ultimately what happened. But just to give you the details, a lot of the tribes in this area, the Great Plains, and again, when we're talking Great Plains, we're talking about Tornado Alley, we're talking about Kansas, Nebraska, this entire swath right there in the middle of the United States. The Lakotas, Cheyenne, the Blackfoot tribes, they use every part of this animal. They use their meat for food, their fur, their hides for teepees and clothing, their bones for tools, their horns for utensils. And yes, listen to this, they use their tendons and their poop. Oh my goodness. Yes, what's the more appropriate word for poop? It's called dung. Animal dung. On the Great Plains, there were very few trees. That meant very little firewood. So when the buffalo roam the plains, yes, the Native Americans collect their dung. They called them buffalo chips. But here's the thing. Once it dried, it didn't really smell at all. And it burned surprisingly well. So they used, you know what, to cook food, to boil water, and to stay warm. The sinew, this is like this strong, fibrous tissue, basically tendons, like I said, the connected muscles to bones, muscles to muscles. It was these white, tough strands. It was like natural string inside the body because this is what they did. They took it from the buffalo's legs and backs, they dried it, and they split it into thin strand. When it was moistened, this sinew became flexible, and when it dries, it shrinks and tightens, and it becomes incredibly strong. So what did they use this for? Obviously for strings, for bones, for cord, for tools and clothing, and really just thread, just sew hides together and some of their clothes together. It was stronger than plant fibers and incredibly durable. So obviously, it wasn't just for food. It became an animal that was used for religious purposes. It became the fabric of who they were. Like I said, it provided heat, clothing, tools, shelter, and even sewing material. It was every part of the animal was used, and especially when the settlers, the white settlers, came across the prairies and they would see the animals killed indiscriminately just for sport, just for fun, and just use it for meat. It was outrageous to the Native Americans. But it wasn't just sport. In 1869, when the railroad was completed, the first transcontinental railroad, the Civil War was over. The Industrial Revolution took over. So what does this mean? Yes, it's a revolution, meaning things changed. Industry, which means big businesses. Very simply, you went from making things by hand out on the prairie, out through pretty much all across the country, to almost exclusively making things with machines. To power these machines, you needed industrial belts. Yes, when you're thinking of belts, you're talking about what goes around your waist. But at this time, there became a huge demand for these machines to move. And how is it that they moved early on in the Industrial Revolution? Well, we talked about the advent of steam power with the steamboats and certainly with the locomotive, but you now needed to have machines move. And how was that done? Belts. Industrial belts, conveyor belts. If you look at the early machines, whether it was making clothes, whether it was making tools, farm equipment, books, paper, you name it, these belts in photographs, they're so fascinating. They're like pulleys. They come in from outside from the wheel that's powered by the water or steam, and they come into the factory. They line the walls, they go across the ceilings, and then they come down. and they're constantly moving, which moves the machinery to move the looms, to weave the clothes, you name it. These belts came from tan hides. And what are hides? The skin of large animals like hippos and elephants. But because there was so many bison and buffalo across the plains, this was dramatically one of the reasons that the herds disappeared. Our society that advanced so quickly with building factories, demanding more and more products, our country growing, this was one of the factors. And you see, what ended up happening was they realized that the hides, again, the skin of the bison, they were 40% stronger than the leather that was taken from cows. So now these belts that were needed, they needed to be stronger, they needed to be durable, they needed to be flexible and elastic, and sure enough, this was the perfect place to get them from the bison. And again, just further digression, hey, tanned hides. Well, it's tanning is all about how you make the leather. You scrape away the fur, the fat, the meat from the skin, and you soak that skin in this liquid bath of tannins, which are these natural chemicals that are found in tree bark. This tanning process had been going on for years, and it permanently changes the skin so that, again, it becomes this tough, flexible leather that won't rot or fall apart. They used the buffalo's bones for fertilizer, and listen to this. One of my students, a second grader, knew this. Their tongues. When I talked about the fact that they would just leave the carcasses along the prairie, along the line of the Transcontinental Railroad, and they would just kill them for sport, well, very often they only kill them just for their tongues. Why? Because it was considered a delicacy. If you slow cooked it over a fire, it was almost like this buttery type of taste. It tasted really well, but not eaten today like it was in the past. And the final point here about the almost systematic elimination of this great animal across the plains is the government. Whether this is reality or not reality, the government knew that eliminating the buffalo would weaken the plain tribes who depended on them, and there was a push from the settlers, along with the government, to have the Native Americans be moved away. And here is the reality. I mentioned this earlier in the podcast. 1800, you had 50 million of these bison. By the end of the century, 1900, you had fewer than 1,000 remain. Today, thankfully, through lots of conservation efforts, you've got upwards of 350,000 to 400,000 bison that are roaming, not all over the place, but certain specific protected areas, certainly the Yellowstone National Park, and many organizations through the years that put in a specific effort to make sure that this beautiful animal did not go extinct. So finally, some fun facts. They can jump fences up to 6 feet high. They can spin around despite weighing almost a ton. Their head weighs about 250 pounds. The babies, as soon as they're born, within minutes, are walking around. They are a red color, orange reddish color, and they're actually called a calf. And along with that, they're actually closer to cows and domestic cattle in terms of their relationship, in terms of their species, than the actual buffalo on the other side of the world. They have excellent memories, and they can remember locations for years. They shed their winter coat in huge clumps in the spring, and they survive their winters pretty good. And for my Jersey friends, they used to live in Jersey thousands of years ago. And unlike cattle, They help the grass grow. You would think so many, all they're doing is eating the grass, but they don't rip it out by the roots like cattle do. And their horns, I mentioned them before, they're permanent and hollow inside. They don't shed them like deer antlers, and both males and females have horns. And their fur used to be used to make paintbrushes. The male bison are called bulls. The female bison are called cows, and the babies are called calves. And the bulls don't usually lead the herd. The herds are led by the older females. The guys, they stay alone or in these small bachelor groups for most of the year. How do they communicate? With these like deep grunts. They're low, like rumbling sounds, and they can travel long distances. I think most of us know this because of their big head. Their eyes are actually on the sides of their head. Gives them good peripheral vision to spot predators, but it also means they don't see very good directly in front of them. And finally, they can swim. Even though they're close to a ton, they're great swimmers. You could see them going across rivers using their powerful legs to paddle and their massive heads that cut through the water. This 2,000-pound, shaggy, humped-back giant calmly swimming across the water. Friends, thanks for taking this journey with me, learning all about the American bison, the buffalo. Reach out to me at kevmok21@gmail.com. We have a Facebook group called OK Let's Learn. That's where we can get a community going, questions, comments, requests for future episodes, anything. Always love the reviews, appreciate them, the ratings as well. Until next time, have fun and keep learning.